Hey guys, JB here from Alpha Wolf Consulting, coming to you today with another episode of the Alpha Wolf Personal Development and Expansion Program or series. Alrighty, so today's talk basically runs off of yesterday's talk. So we'll do a little bit of a recap along what we spoke about yesterday. So, understanding language, okay, understanding the power of language in as a core of reprogramming the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. So, understanding the importance of the language that we choose and the language that we basically decide to use in terms of if it has negative connotation or um, like negative effects to us or positive effects to us. Alrighty, we went over and we did a bit about on how to look back at, past experiences. So what we understood the key areas to be is that the language I use influences the beliefs that I hold, which influence the emotions and the feelings that I feel in each moment. Okay. So we understood in retrospection and looking back that I can look back or experience in the past or even the present moment in objective or subjective. So I can be the subject of my life or I can objectively view my life, which is very important because this allows us to create a distinction between what is happening to me and what is happening in my life. And when we're able to sort of separate from things always happening to me, we're able to approach them and view them objectively without the need for me to be there. Alrighty, so we went through and we looked at the full brain activation, so understanding the movement of the body and how it works in terms of activating our mind or both of our hemispheres and really understanding how it affects in terms of when we are conditioning in and that's what we're going to be going through today is understanding now that we understand the general terms of full brain activation. Now, how do we use that process to condition in new behaviors and new emotions, new feelings, new beliefs, whatever it may be? So, an important thing to understand about this is okay, when I say conditioned, conditioned means two things: repetition and duration. Okay. So when we talk about conditioned learning is learning something through high repetition and long durations. Okay. So we're not trying to be good at something. We're doing something 1,000 times because we know we will be good at it. Do you sort of get it? Does it make sense? So it's very important to understand this because this is the core foundation of the learning models that I have personally developed around conditioned learning and learning through conditioning. All right. So what we're able to do is through conditioning, so muscle memory. How do we get muscle memory? By doing something 1,000 times on repeat. So it's very important for us to understand that the two factors that are involved in conditioned learning are repetition and duration. Both those factors influence how quickly we understand and how deeply we memorize because repetition and duration strengthen our synaptic pathways. Our brain is always looking for the easiest path to achieve the goal. If we consciously strengthen specific paths that we know achieve the goal, what happens is our brain naturally will follow those paths. So it's very important to understand this, that we're not trying to remember things. We are reading the same thing 1,000 times because we're strengthening the connection between each of those words, or between that sentence, or between that language pattern, or between that paragraph, or between that meaning, whatever it may be. So what we got to understand is that it's not through the action of learning that we learn, it's through the repetition of the same information being present that strengthens the synaptic pathways for that information. So, in understanding this, what we now are able to do is translate that from not only just learning, but now into development of behaviors and development of understanding. So if I understand that the point of learning isn't to try and learn, that it's just to hear information again and again and again and again, I am now able to learn anything by just focusing in on learning or conditioning myself to that information again and again and again and again. So the repetition, so the amount of repetition done per day, per hour, per minute, whatever it may be, will affect the required duration to be able to ingrain or strengthen. And duration is just, so the repetition is the action that strengthens the synaptic pathway. The duration, okay, determines how strong that synaptic pathway gets. If I do 5 bicep curls in 10 minutes once, I've I've that movement, I have strengthened the synaptic pathway for that movement. I have developed the muscles, okay, through the action. But because the duration wasn't long enough, or because I didn't do it repetitively, day in, day out, day in, day out, it hasn't given me the ability to do it easy. So if we think about this, the more times I can condense doing something over a long enough duration, so 1 to 3 months as a minimum. So if I can do 10 bicep curls for 90 days, by the end of that 90-day, regardless of if I tried to be good at bicep curls or if I tried not to be good at bicep curls, regardless, at the end of that 90 days, my understanding on the movement, if I do the same movement day in, day out, will be locked in. So naturally, my muscles will align to that movement. When my brain thinks about lifting and doing a bicep curl, it will move the weight in alignment with the movement, the positioning. These are the synaptic pathways that we are strengthening through muscle memory. So when we're thinking about in terms of theoretical or knowledge-based learning, well, it's not the muscle memory that we're trying to strengthen. It's now the allocated memory. So where the memory is stored. And to understand this is just to understand that our memory is linked to the meaning we give to things. If things hold importance to me, they will be held as important by me. So our subconscious memory is based a lot around meaning. The meanings that we apply to different words, different language patterns, different paragraphs, different information, different, truths, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So the meaning that we are subscribing to it. So things like, for example, if we act disinterested, like this information is irrelevant or it doesn't matter, why would we ever allocate energy to then store that information? It just doesn't make logical sense. So understanding that the first step to conditioned learning is conditioning meaning to words, or meaning to terms, or meaning to information, like whatever it may be. Okay, where we're just assigning the meaning, okay, that we want to use as a marker, as a bookmark. Okay, and that's all it is. So for example, when I am trying to store financial information or information about money matters, like what is the meaning? Well, the meaning is income generating. It's sustainability in terms of sustaining myself. Like, that's the importance. So we assign meaning like food, hunger, things like that, so that we know when I'm hungry, when things aren't going good. That's the information that is always prevalent. Do you sort of get it? So we can also assign different forms of meaning. So meaning in general sense, meaning in highly specific sense, meaning in emotional sense. Okay, so things can have emotional meaning to us. So, for example, we can use understanding of finances and understanding of money generation and all of that, and we can assign it to feeling good. So, when I want to feel good, and when I get myself into that state of feeling good, that is the memories that are sort of coming along and along and along in my brain. So understanding this is just slightly different to trying to learn. Trying to learn is all about the conscious mind. The conscious mind doesn't have access to emotions, doesn't have access to feelings, is very logical. So when we think about trying to memorize, which is what we do in terms of in the conscious access or aspect, what we're doing is we're trying to memorize specific key terms, synonyms, different things like this. We're trying to memorize the meaning of outcome, because that's how our conscious mind determines everything, is by meaning of outcome. So not meaning that the thing held, but the meaning of the outcome. Rules of thumb. Okay. So if you understand this, it's basically our subconscious mind is the meaning that something holds. Our conscious mind is the meaning that the outcome of something. I did this equals this. I took this action, it equals that action. And then we assign meaning to it. It's not emotive meaning, it's logical meaning. If I speed in a car, I will get pulled over and a fine. Like, do you know what I mean? It doesn't really mean anything. But when we have our subconscious information, okay, speeding in a car equals death, pain, fear, loss. So it's a different form of meaning, because it doesn't make logical sense. Why does speeding equal loss? Why does speeding equal death? Do you sort of understand? Our subconscious mind doesn't understand logic, so it just displays what it dislikes to it, or we display what we dislike to it. And this is part of behavioral conditioning, and conditioning in new behaviors is we're using this logical aspect of it to where, okay, if I don't want to eat high fat foods and I don't want to eat high processed foods, then in my subconscious, what I'm going to do through full brain activation is condition in certain responses or associations between behaviors. Okay, so craving, for example, junk food, and then eating junk food. So if I crave junk food, I condition in eating junk food equals death, equals loss, equals unhealthiness, equals this, equals that. Like these, emotive feelings and meanings behind those feelings. So, like, why is loss, like, what is the meaning that loss holds? Loss can hold many things. Loss can be loss of independence, loss of health, loss of finances, loss of family, loss of personal relationships, loss of identity of self, like all these different things. So what we're doing is we are assigning the meaning to that emotion that we want it to hold. Just for example, pain. Pain can be, a negative connotation, or it can be a positive connotation. Pain can equal, loss. Pain can equal, or mean, you know, like hurt, negative in terms of physical pain. There's mental pain. There's, emotional pain. There's the pain of heartbreak, pain of loss, pain of your hand being cut off. But pain can also mean growth. Pain can mean resilience. Pain can mean many different positive things. So the thing is that we can assign what is seen as a negative emotion, the emotion of pain, okay, the sensation, that emotion that is, hurt, okay. So it's sort of like pain is the sensory stimulation, okay. Hurt is the emotion that is felt. So in emotional pain, I'm not actually sensing pain, I'm feeling emotionally hurt. So it's very important to understand this because it's in understanding the interchangeability between emotions and meaning, between words and meaning, that we can choose and determine what each word, what each emotion, feeling, you know, means to us. And then we're able to create it into being either a positive or a negative um, sort of aspect of it. So, for example, when we are trying to condition in new behaviors, what we are essentially doing is realigning in the conscious mind the language. Okay, so the language and the structure of how we describe things to ourselves, and then the meaning or the outcomes we get from that. So if I talk positive to myself, the meaning is I feel positive about myself. So do you sort of see how it is the outcome? In the conscious brain, there is action, outcome. In the subconscious brain, okay, it is all about the feelings and the emotions that we assign to them. And we determine if they're positive or negative by the meaning that is held by them. If something is positive, it means it adds to me. It's something that builds me up. Okay, if it's negative, it's something that takes away from me. So we can see, for example, if we took, for example, heartbreak, and we're looking at it from the subconscious and we're trying to alter that emotion and that behavior of that feeling heartbreak. Because maybe our behaviors are that when we feel emotionally unstable, in terms of when I feel heartbroken, I tend to overeat. So we want to alter the behavior of overeating because of emotional instability. Okay. So what we're doing is we're seeing heartbreak and then we're looking at the negative connotations, so the negative meanings associated with it. Then we're looking at the positive meanings associated with it or creating them. Okay, and then we are making a conscious choice to focus in on the positive meanings. Okay, and when we focus in on the positive meanings, what we're essentially doing is assigning positive emotion to that emotion. So heartbreak doesn't have to feel hurtful. Hurtful can feel joyous. Do you know what I mean? And it's simply by shifting and altering that perspective from seeing pain or negativity as negative and seeing positivity as positive. So it's sort of like if someone gives me something, I can see that as being an amazing thing. If someone takes something away from me, I can see that as a negative thing. Okay. So I can sort of see it as, this is what's positive, this is what's negative. But then I can shift that around to when I give something. So someone taking something from me is me giving something to them. Now that taking becomes positive. And then when I see the giving, that was one, or the someone giving something to me, I can see it as someone projecting negative behaviors or negative, their issues and their problems, and they're putting that on me. And now it's become a negative to where I'm becoming overburdened by it. So it's in understanding this that it's not the actions, it's not anything that holds the meaning in terms of if it's positive, if it's negative, it's our perspective. So if I choose to see someone taking from me as being a positive experience, then I can assign positive meaning to it. If I only ever see someone taking from me as being a negative experience, then I can only ever assign negative meaning to it. So it will never change. So understanding the flexibility between you determine if someone punching you in the face is a negative thing happening to you or it's a positive thing happening to you. It's all up to you. So once we understand this, now we understand that to influence our subconscious mind, what we want to be doing is realigning from negative perspective on emotions. So when I feel anger, is it because of a negative reason or is it a positive reason? Like, and then, and this is different because when we're conditioning in to change our behaviors and our beliefs and our emotions, okay, we're not influencing the external environment. That's a different level. Okay. So we're only focused in on the internal environment because, like, for example, when we're influencing the external environment, if someone does something positive or negative to me, have they done anything to me? Like, or are they just doing something and then I'm experiencing it? So, like, it doesn't even need to register an emotive response for me. I can deregister the emotive response in the environment. But for this, we are only focusing on the internal. So we're not worried about the external of altering and shaping meaning. But essentially, what we are trying to do is understand the core concept that in conditioning behaviors, all of it is linked in our memory of meaning. Meaning is how we assign the powerfulness of a memory or the energy requirement to sort of store it, so to speak. So, for example, if something is highly traumatic and we develop a memory based on that, it becomes very, very ingrained because we devote a lot of focus to focusing on problem solving that memory, but also, trying to avoid it and things like that. So things like, if it's a very powerful memory and it's done that, then it takes a lot more work to root it. But if we're able to, when creating new behaviors, when creating new habits, when creating new meaning for old words that we may have, we can artificially influence the power of it to the meaning given. So the more powerful the meaning we give it, okay? So for example, saying unhealthy junk food equals death, that's one way. Saying unhealthy, we can assign additional meaning. So, what kind of a death does it mean? Does it mean becoming obese? Does it mean the body breaking down over a long period of time? Does it mean, diseases increasing? Does it mean lower immunity? So you're sick more? Like we can keep adding and making this sort of meaning of death more and more and more amplified to make it more and more powerful as a negative sort of repulsion to where I don't want that. So I'm going to avoid this. So we can make the association powerful to this equals this, and I know it for a fact, but then we can increase the, so to speak, like the power of the meaning of the outcome or the meaning of what is going to happen, which is very important because when we understand this, we're now able to focus in on core elements that we want to change or that we want to, for example, we can do the exact same on happiness. So, stress can cause us to feel anxiety, or stress can cause us to feel excitement. We determine. So, if I'm feeling stressed, maybe I make a conscious choice to assign that to excitement. What am I excited about? Am I excited about dealing with the situation? Am I excited about something that I've got coming up? So, it's in understanding this that we're now able to amplify that to, you know, expanding. What does excitement mean? What are we excited about? Really focusing in on it and investing a lot of energy because that's what we're doing. We're investing our mental and emotional energy into it so that when the feeling comes up, it's sort of like it's a very powerful response. So things like stress, we can reassociate stress from being negative anxiousness to positive excitement. And then we can make that synaptic pathway very, very powerful by expanding that excitement, defining it, specifying it, like creating that emotion so that when I think about it or when that thought crosses my subconscious mind or that synaptic pathway is fired, what happens is that high feeling, the serotonin, the dopamine, the oxytocin, like that is released in high quantities that give me that heightened state or that boost. All right. So, like we mentioned in yesterday's session, the hardest thing to do with the subconscious mind is to catch behaviors being enacted or actions or decisions being taken because they're subconscious, which means they fire at a rate that is faster than our conscious mind can become aware of them. So, what that means is if we aren't consciously looking for it and anticipating it, it's harder to catch. Even if we are anticipating it, it takes time and training of catching ourselves, of being observant to really become effective at catching it in the moment. So what we want to do is we want to create synaptic pathways or behaviors that basically we plan out and implant, and then we monitor and measure. So things like, for example, negative self-talk, we when we notice or when we hear of that we are being negative or that we maybe are a bit, upset or whatever it may be, negative and pissy, what we're able to do is we then go out and structure in new self-talk and we implant it. We use the full brain activation, crossing the hemispheres with repetition and duration. So saying the language pattern again and again and again and again until we feel an emotional shift or an emotional change that signifies the acceptance to the new language pattern, belief, narrative, actions, or behaviors. So if we wanted to give up smoking, well, our natural, if it is a habit, our habitual pattern is when I feel stressed, I crave cigarettes. So what we want to do is then we want to artificially change that from when I feel stressed, I realize it's excitement or something like that. The language doesn't matter. You can use whatever language you want. Simplicity is usually the best formula because complex, like language patterns, are quite hard to do on repeat. So we want it to be simple, you know. So it could be as simple as when I'm stressed, I crave fruit. And what we do is we put ourselves in the full brain activation position, okay, crossing the hemispheres, and we just repeat when I feel stressed. I crave fruit when I feel stressed. I crave fruit when I feel stressed. I crave fruit, crave fruit. And we keep doing that again and again and again and again until there is an emotional shift. And that emotional shift is our body saying, when I feel stressed, I crave fruit. It's the agreement. We don't stop until we achieve that because this is conditioned. Conditioned is different to activities or whatever. Conditioning means we do it until it is done. Okay. So if I'm conditioning my body, I don't work out once a week. I work out until my body is in a certain condition. So that's an important thing to understand is that we're doing it again and again and again, and then we're expanding the duration that we do it repetitively. And we're just making it the highest focus. Okay. So by us doing it until we feel the emotional shift, our body said it's locked in. Then we do it tomorrow. And then we do it the next day. And then we do it again until it just becomes a part of who we are and how our subconscious mind works, to the point where as soon as I get the inclination within my subconscious that I'm stressed, I crave fruit. So then I'll start craving fruit. So we understand this through the experiment of Pavlov's dog, that through stimuli and associate, or through stimuli or stimuli, we can create association. So, for example, we are trying to not feel less stressed, but what we're trying to do is identify and associate stress with fruit. So instead of stress being associated with stimulant, which is tobacco or nicotine or whatever, we associate it with fruit, sugar, which is also another stimulant. Not so much a stimulant, but it does the same effect where it gives us a short increase. Okay, so that's all we're trying to do. And all we have to do it is to implant it in our subconscious, because once it's implanted in our subconscious, we don't have to think about like quitting smoking, because all we have to do is reprogram the habit or the behavior to a new one and then enforce the new one through daily conditioning. So, for example, if I wanted to learn sales, and I really wanted to understand, well, I can sit there and try and learn and understand everything there is about sales, or every day for 2 to 3 hours, I can just listen about to sales. I can focus on sales. I can read about sales. I can do sales. And I do that every day. It just becomes a way or a part of who I am in terms of my identity, but also the habit is there that for 2 or 3 hours a day, my mind hyper focuses in on specified information. Okay. So, what we're trying to do when breaking a habit or changing our behavior, because behavior is just habits enacted. Okay. So, when we act out, unless we are consciously saying, I'm going to go do this, and we're forcing it, which is a conscious decision, okay, when we're just behaving or it's subconscious behavior, it is just habits enacted, okay? So the important thing to understand about this is that our habits are just the strongest synaptic pathways, i.e., our behaviors, our subconscious or compulsive behaviors are just the strongest synaptic pathway within that area, that specified area. So if every time I try to study, I procrastinate, it's not because I cannot focus, it's that the synaptic pathways for focusing are underdeveloped and the synaptic pathways for distraction or procrastination are overdeveloped. So it's only through conscious realignment and like reprogramming through conditioning, okay, of when I want to say, let's say, study, I just sit at the computer and I study. It doesn't matter if I don't feel like studying. It doesn't matter if I don't do anything productive. I just do the behavior and that strengthens it. And then the next time it strengthens it, and then the next time. And then at a certain point in time, when I sit down to study, all I want to do is study because it's a programmed in behavior. Like when I sit at the table, I want to eat, sort of a thing. Like when I sit at the dinner table, my mind and my urges are to eat, because it's the association or the associated behavior to it. So things like you'll notice in negative associations of behavior. When I lay down to watch a movie, I crave junk food. So the reason for this is that I'm in a grazing state. So I've got grazing behavioral patterns or eating patterns that are associated to improvements or increases in relaxation or positive outcomes or positive benefits. So every time I lay down to watch a movie, I start to get hungry because Pavlov's dog, I've associated those two behaviors as being linked. Alrighty. So that's an important thing to understand, is that we're associating the behaviors. So it's about identifying what are the negative behaviors that we don't want to hold anymore. What are the positive behaviors that we want to hold? And then basically going out there and artificially curating those behaviors into new habits. So, for example, if I wanted to exercise more, then all I do is when let's say I get home from work at 5 o'clock, like instead of sitting in front of the couch, I put on running shoes and go for a walk. Like, and I just do that. And what happens is over a long enough duration, 30 to 90 days, that habit of getting home at 5, going straight for a walk will become so ingrained that basically it will feel like I'm not doing what I want to do when I'm not walking. So if I get home at 5 and then I go to sit down, I'll feel bored. I'll feel like I need to be moving, like I need to do something because my body's used to running that subroutine of when we get home, we go for a walk. So it's in understanding that this is just how we alter our behavior because our behavior is just habitual. So behavior we're not consciously thinking about is habitual behavior. Habitual behavior is behaviors that are habits, and habits are just the strongest synaptic pathway. So all we have to do is alter our synaptic pathways to influence a change. And how do we do that? Through repetition and duration, through conscious focus of deciding what I want the habit to be or the behavior to be, and then just enacting it through reassigning meaning so that that habit or behavior that I'm trying to um, create within myself or change is changing to something that I deem to be highly positive and beneficial to me. So that when I do it, I feel like I'm getting, like I'm not expending, like things aren't being taken from me, I'm being able to give them. So, one thing to understand is when we're trying to do a workout regime, we don't look at how difficult it is, we look at how much energy we can exert. They're the exact same thing. But basically, when we look at how much energy we can exert, it shifts the focus from me working out is something that takes away or something that is negative or hard. And it shifts it to something where I'm measuring my performance yesterday against my performance today. And it becomes easier and easier and easier and more incentivized to give more. So that's a very important aspect of it that we really want to stay focused in on is understanding the perspective that we're determining that I don't want to live a negative life, i.e., everything I do is positive. And if something I do is negative, then I remove that or I reassign it so that it is positive. Like that's sort of the thing. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.